I would say regardless of how whether it's paid or not, this is just factoring in the stage I am in my career because
Mhm.
basically, although I'm proud of the work I've done so far, I am an unknown. Um, I would definitely draw the bar if it was a project that required me to be like sort of like physically or like where I'm playing a character who's being like physically or sort of like sexually humiliated in any way, even though like again, even though it's not for real, like it's just in a scene. Um, just with me being like kind of like an unknown right now, that and me being at still the beginning of my career, I wouldn't quite take on a project like that yet. I would wait until like I've done more kind of work. I've established my name a bit more, kind of like established more career for myself as an actor.
Yeah.
I don't want to start off being known as the guy who's been having God knows what done to. I mean, see, I can't even like properly like articulate a hypothetical scenario because like the idea of doing something like that so early in my career just makes me squeam even alone just thinking of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but at the same time, just to because I'm thinking about this as you're talking about it, but any role you do is going to be the first you'll somebody sees. You can
Mm-hmm.
be established, but at some point that's going to be the first impression to someone. So the question is, you kind of playing the numbers game a bit of like, okay, but maybe a number of people or enough people will see other stuff before they see this. I
Mm-hmm.
guess you can play that game. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is an interesting sort of aspect I
Debate,
haven't
yeah,
considered yet of like,
because
what.
like, you're right, it is your first impression with someone.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't get to pick, what people see.
Mm-hmm.
And, but hopefully, again, yeah, I guess it comes back to hopefully you have enough other things that even if people look up your name, they see, okay, that's not the only thing they've done. They've done other stuff as well.
Yeah, they're not just like they're not you're not just going to be like cemented in their head as like this pathetic person who got humiliated on screen like
But
oh
then,
god.
but then you've got character like I'm thinking Philip Seymour Hoffman, who talked about he wanted to play the losers and he wanted to play the people that were, sort of not just downtrodden, but somewhat repulsive sometimes or pathetic.
Mhm.
Like he actively wanted to play that, and he made a career out of it. And so I mean, it became more and more because then he ended up playing a cult leader that does not resemble Scientology at all. Uh,
It's an allegory, yeah, they want
it's
you to
it's
remember
it's not
that.
yeah, it's not about that. It's an allegory,
Yeah.
as you said. But but yeah, so it is one of those things where yeah, I get the point you're making.
Mhm.
I haven't really thought about that as much, I guess. I haven't actually this is the first time I'm having this conversation about this and I'm trying to think of what I would choose. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
I'm quite happy you brought up this question because that's something I have to consider now.
It's very thought provoking. Yeah, yeah. Can make a whole other interview about it.
Fair enough, fair
Because
enough.
it does pose a dilemma. Like, I don't want to be cemented. Like, if I want to I want my breakout role, like, which is going to kind of cement my image, in sort of like the minds and like the eyes of like people who are experiencing me for the first time properly. It's like I don't know. I just don't want it to be as that guy who's being like physically or sexually humiliated in that certain scene in that certain movie. Like, I don't know. It's just not how I want to start off my journey.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I can't argue with that and I won't
Yeah,
argue with
yeah.
that. But yeah, that's
Mhm.
something to think about, like how much control you actually have about how you're going to be perceived. What's
Exactly. Like
what is going to be your breakout role? Like you don't know
exactly. Like
unless you get
yeah.
cast in the lead of a Disney, production or the next Star Wars, and
That's different.
some.
I don't think yeah, that's more stuff Disney does behind the scenes rather than on screen. But yeah,
No, but I meant no, I meant like
that could
like you
be a
don't get to
whole.
choose what's your breakout role unless it's like an obvious big one.
Yeah, but
You,
it does kind of call into that sort of question of it's like you kind of have to weigh up the cost between like yes this could potentially be like a slingshot street stardom, but like at what cost of my dignity? and then it's like at what, factor in the cost of your dignity. Like you got to factor in like the, how many more years towards you getting that possibly other big break is that going to cost you as well?
See, I
You
want
know,
to ask you something about
if you're
the
not
whole thing with the big
qualifying yet
breaks,
by
right?
then.
That's something I want to ask you because I feel like we're always, especially actors, we are chasing big breaks, right?
Hmm.
But I'm kind of got to that point where like I'm actively like I don't believe in the big break anymore because
Hmm.
like yeah, it gives you more opportunity, sure, but I'm like if your career can be made by a single role or by a couple of roles, it means it can be broken by a couple of roles.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel
Because
like
we
that's an unhealthy sort of
mentality.
pressure, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
And
don't care how big your break is,
mhm.
you're gonna have to keep working afterwards.
Exactly, exactly. You still got to hustle. Like again, Silas, I'm so glad we're getting on the same pages here because like I can't tell you enough the amount of times like I've seen actors from like hit movies and TV shows like pretty much icons of their era going pretty much like right back to the same roles that they were groveling for when they first started out. Like, I mean, I'm probably using a fairly obscure example, like, Crispin Glover, whose sort of like breakout role was as like Marty McFly's dad in Back to the
Yeah.
Future. That was a very principal role. And then it's like just about a decade after that, he's, I don't know, some random guy in that Larry Flint movie that Woody Harrelson did. And he has maybe like 10, 15 lines throughout the entire film. He's
I think Crispin Glover's been doing all right. I've seen him pop up in other stuff. He was one of the gods in American Gods. He was one of the new.
oh, okay. I mean, like I only recently remember him as like the one-armed bell-hopping hot tub time machine.
Fair
Like,
enough.
oh yeah, yeah. But
No, he's
again, like
playing out their characters. He's playing out their characters. Is what you're saying.
yeah, but like yeah, yeah. I mean, like it just goes to show, like even when you win, no matter how big you win, you can still lose. Like better example actually, Jason Momoa. Oh, I mean, this was pretty shocking. Like he was apparently on the edge of poverty for years. In the time between he did Game of Thrones and like Justice League. Like again, edge of poverty for like a couple years. Like when he just come off of doing Game of Thrones, which like
Yeah.
that was like hot shit back in the like or that dominated like the public discourse of like early 2010s
Yeah.
prime time TV.